Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. I am your host, Mr. Kurt Wuckert Jr., rocking live from sunny South Florida, produced also out of South Florida by the mysterious mystery man, Mr. Mystery, as he likes to be called. And so thank you for doing everything you do, everybody, and thank you for watching live, friends and family. If you could like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, and let our digital overlords know that you wish to consume our content on the YouTube and the X and Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. It's much appreciated, because if we don't pay our toll to the evil overlords, well, then they will they will demonetize us and send our streams off over the river Styx, unfortunately. A little depressing. Hi, everybody. Good to see the people saying hello. We are amid, okay, here in South Florida, the snowbirds are just about to go home, which is great, because the accents go from New York accents and start turning into South Florida accents again at the grocery store, which makes me feel very comfortable. But then we're not too far away from the spring breakers, which show up, which is the kids of the people that just went home the month before. And then that's its whole own thing. But I'm pretty excited for summer, because not only is it too hot to go outside, but it is also too hot for everyone that doesn't live here, and the traffic goes away. So that's exciting for me. If you want to check my pinned post, I talk quite a bit about something that I think has been missing for a very long time in the space. And it is the pleasing aesthetics and good storytelling of any good company. And I start with an example of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs being, one of the most important entrepreneurs of all time, frankly, but a sort of a key figure in tech, but also something of an influence on me. And the funny thing is that the Macintosh grew out of initially his love for calligraphy, believe it or not. So if you have never read a bio on Steve Jobs, he was obsessed with really good fonts and really wanted good fonts to exist in the world, because he was sort of disliked the brutalism that was coming into things like architecture and other things in that era, which is like late 70s, early 80s era. And I agree with him on that point. Like brutalist sort of Soviet style, like everything's a concrete cube, is not aesthetically pleasing. And that was a big influence on him. So he wanted to build a computer that was focused first on aesthetics, because from the environment in which you work could spring forth other great art. And he thought great art was really important for just making a great everything. Like, you want your spaces and your experiences to be aesthetically pleasing, because that then encourages the work that you create to also be aesthetically pleasing, and that just makes a life worth living. Now, that can be a little weird for your typical software dev type who it tends to be into the granular and more focused on function and these kind of things. But ultimately, we're trying to create software and applications and environments for billions of people to work inside of, and that has its own challenges. And one of those challenges is, how do I make the average person want to play in my sandbox? And part of that is by making it look pretty. And so anyways, my article goes into a lot of specifics on why you might want to do this, and how to think like an entrepreneur while also thinking like an artist. And I would very much appreciate it if you would click my article, read it, and give me a little bit of feedback on X, as we are also trying to hack that algorithm by having you enjoy what I think is pretty good content, and ultimately brings more people into the conversation to be talking about BSV, Big Block Bitcoin, and all of that jazz. So I want to thank our sponsors, the Champions TCG folks, who are now called Otherworldly. I got to go through a name change with them every 6 months, so that's fun. But they are actually really kicking a lot of ass. They're one of my favorite companies out there. They're doing a lot of really cool stuff, in that they are pursuing customers by creating something that customers actually want to play with, as opposed to, I don't know, I guess I'm in the ecosystem here, I should do this thing. They're looking for people that aren't just crypto nerds or Bitcoin boffins. Is boffin a word? I don't know if that is, but if if they like the blockchain stuff, there's typically like this weird extortionary thing about play my game, it uses the token we like. But in reality, they are pursuing real customers in the real world with a real game that is actually fun to play, at least in theory. And so they are pretty cool, and they're a sponsor of the show. So the comment of the day will be receiving a prize pack, a full deck of cards in the otherworldly TCG game. So please comment forthwithly with that in mind. And also thank you to Rock Wallet. That's right, the only wallet built entirely out of rocks. If you are actually, if you know anything about how hard drives work, that is not even false. This isn't a chemistry lesson or a geology lesson, but Rock Wallet is Rock Wallet's a killer tool. So it is a self-sovereign. You have your own keys. You can keep your Bitcoin, your ETH, stable coins, a couple other things. You can also trade them. Now, if you trade them, you're using their KYC AML system to make a trade slightly outside your wallet apparatus because liquidity pools don't exist in your wallet. But once the coins are back in your wallet, they are your coins. So you are given your keys. You can take those keys. You can put them in any other wallet. I get a lot of confusion from people because it is a two thing. Like you have the custodial aspect of the wallet is for trading, and that's its own thing. And then there's the non-custodial, self-sovereign, be your own king wallet where you have your own keys and keep your own Bitcoin. And it's pretty great for that too. So again, please patronize Rock Wallet. Let them know that you heard about it on the CoinGeek Weekly live stream so they continue to sponsor my nonsense, which is really kind of feels like that's all I got sometimes, but, but you're here anyways. I guess it's my job to be entertaining for at least 1 hour a day on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please set your calendars, etch that into stone if you can. And by stone, I mean probably the hard drive on your iPhone or your computer. But again, like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, all of that jazz. We are going to play an ad from Rock Wallet, and we're going to come back with the most prolific, enigmatic, I don't even know if he's Texan, but we are doing a thing in Texas next month. we're gonna find out more details. Mr. Ty Everett is putting together, or has put together, a hackathon that is nearing us rapidly, much like the spring breakers coming from the north to South Florida. The blockchain developers du jour will be making their way. They're probably packing their wagons now with hardtack to make the journey to Austin, Texas, to join in this hackathon that has a couple of prizes and some really cool people, including, in all likelihood, myself, joining in person to have a good time, hang out with all the people that are building the stuff that the boffins of Bitcoin enjoy using. I need to see if that's a word. Somebody check if that's a word. If you can put this in the box, everybody, but let me, I think that is the right word, but I'm certainly not going to spell it live on the air. So I'm glad this is a spoken word show and not one done entirely over text like the old internet used to be. So sorry, I've lost my mind entirely. If we could play the ad, we're going to listen to why Rock Wallet is the coolest thing in the entire universe, and then we will be back with Ty Everett. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Ty, how you doing, my friend? How are things?
Things are pretty well, actually. We've been doing a lot lately, and I'm happy to get into all the stuff about the hackathon and all this code we've been spewing forth into the ether, and anything else. Yeah,
love it.
How have you been, Kurt?
I'm doing okay. I just Googled, and boffin was the word that I thought it was, which is like an expert of arcane knowledge. And that's exactly what I was hoping I was remembering, and not saying some arcane, potentially prejudice thing that'll get me canceled. So we're going to make it. Ty, so one of the things that you've been focused on that I think is really cool, by the way, is the BRC whole repo of stuff that started, it's got to be 2 years ago or something now, where I think you basically decided, hey, there's a lot of stuff in Bitcoin that we want to get created, and I'm just going to create this repo. And so you did that. Now it's been contributed to widely. can you explain a little bit about the BRC repo?
Yeah.
Who owns it? Whose software is it? Like open source ethos stuff. Give us the download on that, please.
It's a BSV software, basically. The BSV community, the BSV ecosystem owns that repo, and it's a BRC is Bitcoin request for comment, and it's just a place you can go to talk about things that you think should be in BSV and try to make standards about them so that everybody who's trying to use BSV, they can get in on the action and understand what you're all on about with what you're trying to do, and kind of just a more informal place for technical oriented discussion of ways that systems should try to work together in BSV so that BSV can work for the whole world. And that was the idea. And then it started with just a few standards, and by just a few, I mean just a few dozen, um, which were just things that I had in my mind, things that other people had in their minds that we were like, we need to write this down. We need to document our thoughts, our processes, our protocols, our procedures and specifications and bits and bytes all over the place so that everybody has a place where they can go to reference it. That way, if I say something like BRC 100 is the wallet standard that allows all the wallets in the world to hopefully get together and be compatible in the same way that all the web browsers in the world are compatible. We all know we can go to BRC 100, and so we have a numbering system that just starts from 0, which was actually the banana-powered Bitcoin protocol. It was a kind of a joke standard, but it was like the template to get us started. And then, the numbers just count upwards. So every new standard gets its own number, and then you can reference them. And that was the idea. I think if we continue to, keep the BRCs going as a place of collaboration and an open platform for discussion of the new ideas that are happening in BSV all the time, then it'll kind of be serving its purpose. So that's the main idea behind it.
It's really smart. I think for anybody, we have a good mix of technical and non-technical listeners to the show. But if you go back 10, actually probably more now, 12 years or so in Bitcoin, the BIP process, which is something I've been on the one hand critical of, but actually most BIPs are not controversial. But if you're going to make a HD wallet or a hierarchical deterministic wallet, it's BIP 39, and so that's the premise upon which mnemonic phrases are made. And this is a common thing across most wallets in the Bitcoin space up until, the more recently with lots of other derivations that have been created.
And upended the whole
correct.
idea.
Mnemonic phrases and that concept doesn't really scale. So the more UTXOs you have and all this stuff, like it becomes untenable in a lot of ways. But to people watching, it would be very common to just say like, oh, is your wallet BIP 39 enabled? And if the answer is yes, then you know what to expect from how that wallet will behave in a lot of ways. And so it's just a standard, and I like these concepts that go in. Actually, BRC 100. I think is it's one of those things that like we're adopting over like the Gorilla Pool team and the stuff that we're doing. We're like, oh, okay, this is good, and ultimately, we'll head that direction, and anything that's being developed in coordination with us will, we'll adopt that standard and push it out and quite proudly say yes, and it's a BRC 100 compatible wallet. So, yeah.
And the good thing about that, and I'm glad to hear that, Kurt, actually for the first time now. So I'm glad that you guys are adopting that. Is when you do adopt BRC 100, Babbage also has BRC 100 in our wallet. So when someone goes and makes a BSV app, right?
Yep.
If they make it compatible with BRC 100, then someone uses my wallet, they can use it. Someone uses Gorilla Pool stuff. Actually, the app works no matter what because it's the same interface. And that's kind of the point, right? That's kind of the point of all of this standardization, is to get people on board with one way of doing things. And that way, we had Money Button, we had RelayX, we had, these other things in the past, and you built with one of them, but then someone else comes along with a new wallet and it's not compatible, and you got to rewrite your whole app. And that's why we have BRC 100, is so that people don't have to do that anymore.
Yep. No, it's well, and on top of that, it's been everybody's got their own token standard, and so everybody
Yeah.
in BSV needed to have 5 wallets if you wanted to participate in the 5 weird places that or groups of places, I guess. So you had like your Twetch based standards, and you had your RelayX/Run based standards, and then you had so it was like also kind of regional. So you had like in Asia, for example, you had Chinese devs created their own token standard, their
Dot
own
wallet
wallet
stuff.
standards, and all. It's like, oh man, can we all agree on anything? And it kind of sours the mood when you're talking about, oh yeah, it's a global database that anybody can use, but ultimately the higher level protocols use it differently, and so they're not as interoperable as the pamphlet may imply.
Mm.
So no, I'm really glad. First of all, that you've taken a bit of a stand on some of the standardization, and I'm also glad that when I look at it, I'm like, oh, I don't want to fight with Ty about this. So it's frankly just good stuff built on what seem to be very reasonable building block, like modular standards, basically, which I really
Yeah,
like.
I mean, and I think that's the balance that's required with this kind of standardization, because
Yep.
you have people that come along and they're like, "Hey, everybody, let's all have one standard." But then the problem is their standard sucks, and so nobody can actually get on board with it, or it requires everybody to use their thing. They pretend they're making a standard, but what they're really doing is just standing at the center of a Web 2 walled garden, and they're
Yep.
telling everybody, "Hey, you should just use our centralized thing," and that's a standard. But
Yep.
actually, um, you need to balance the idea of trying to get everybody on board with, yeah, not sucking and having a good approach.
Yeah.
Um, and hopefully we've finally been able to do that. I mean, to be clear, I think it was really important for a few years that everybody went off and explored their own ideas of what
Yep.
they wanted to do and what they thought the blockchain was capable of.
Mhm.
What they needed is somebody like me to just sit there in the background for a few years and read and consume all of this stuff pretty silently, and then pull together a few of the best pieces from around this space into
Yep.
something that hopefully doesn't suck and hopefully
Sure.
will get adopted. And that way that can be the standard, and it can incorporate a lot of that learning.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff that people talked about in like theory of Bitcoin, and lots of other just random people around the space saying random good things. It's like, yeah, that's a cool idea. We should do that. And
Yep.
and hopefully we have a BRC standard for wallets with BRC 100 that is going to be compatible with almost all, if not all, token protocols and ways of interacting there, so that most wallets can do most things, and we can have a little bit less friction there, and maybe that leads to bigger network effects, more
Yep.
users, more apps, more wallets, more developers, and a healthier ecosystem. I think we need to get there,
For
and
sure.
focus on trying to just put together the right peopleware, to quote,
Yeah.
like Peter Hitchens and his idea of peopleware. I think that's an
Yeah.
important thing in the ecosystem, and I hope we can work together more. And I think BRC 100 is kind of the first milestone there, where people are starting to look around and realize what kind of some of this stuff is, and how we might be able to create something in common versus create something that fragments. And
Yep.
I think we can do a lot there.
No, I agree. And I think the funny thing, you mentioned network effect, and I think that's the real important thing here is that everybody kind of sees themselves as Apple or something, where they're like, hey, we're gonna come up with this adapter standard, and it's only ours, but we think everybody's gonna go that direction, and that kind of works when you're a almost $1 trillion company, but then we are not big enough to fragment and argue about these kind of things. Like, we need to standardize in order to just gain some adoption and momentum. But ultimately, even Apple now is just USB-C standard across
Yeah.
almost everything they do, because they realize that even in their situation, there's still that fragmented group of people who are inconvenienced by the fact that they're this holdout. And I think ultimately it was the EU regulations that pushed them to USB-C. But the point stands that you don't ever want to create a walled garden for yourself, even if it's the biggest walled garden, because you're missing out on whatever abundance exists on the other side of your wall.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a really important thing for people to get right. And so anyways, I don't want to talk too much about just this concept, but anyways, I'm really glad about a lot of the things that I've seen in the BRC repo. Um, Pivoting a little bit, you recently, just in the last couple of days, announced that the new Babbage stack is coming out. You're open sourcing some of the older stuff, other stuff. Can you go into, first of all, what does that mean? Who should be using the Babbage stack and for what? And then what has recently, like this MetaNet desktop you announced is going open source. Can you explain to us what that is relative to everything else in your Babbage ecosystem?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I mean, connecting the dots with this standardization and with getting everybody on board, um, it's actually the BSV Association that is now offering these things open source and making sure that these things are available for everybody to use, not just Babbage. And it's no longer just like the Babbage stack; it's really the future, trying to get everybody on board with one thing. And so all of the stuff that we have just open sourced in the past week is essentially implementing all of those standards in a way that everybody on the BSV network, everybody in the ecosystem has equal access to run that themselves, take that wallet code and, we need to have various different kinds of wallets. We need a browser extension wallet. We need
Yeah.
other things. And having this code available, I think, lowers the bar for everybody, making it easier for wallet devs to understand how the wallet should work and how it should be implemented. And then it'll make more wallets available more quickly so that when people build apps, maybe you only need a Chrome extension, or maybe you
Right.
have something on your desktop, maybe you're even on a mobile device, and we figure out how to make that work in the long term.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, the MetaNet desktop wallet implements the BRC 100 standard in a completely open source way. And so not only do we have an open standard, but we also have an open reference implementation that can be used by lots of people to start to plug into it.
Awesome.
And so that's kind of the main thing with wallets. We also open sourced a lot of other kind of supporting tools. There's the wallet toolbox. There's some stuff on the data storage side that also, recently got open sourced. But the main thing is actually making it no longer the Babbage stack. Like, we don't want to have a Babbage stack. We want to have a BSV stack that
Yep.
everybody uses, and we're part of that. We're going to be, providing infrastructure. We're going to offer hosting services. And maybe if Gorilla Pool is going to be the AWS of BSV, then we could be the Google Cloud or the Azure Cloud
There you go.
of BSV. But hopefully we can be interoperable, and that's the purpose of this. On the
That would be my
overlay
hope too.
side, we've released some tools to make it easier to operate overlay network hosting businesses. So people who want to, make money hosting overlay services in the cloud at scale. There's now a thing called CARS, or the Cloud Automated Runtime System, that we've opened up. And we think that's a really powerful tool for, basically allowing everybody to define their overlay service in a modular and compatible way. And then if they want to host it on, some, say, infrastructure provider A, right, they can do it, and they can just change the URL and then host it on an infrastructure provider B or any other one, right? And do so without having to change all of their code and to rewrite their overlay service. And so we have some tools and infrastructure around that side as well. And there's some identity stuff, there's authentication stuff, there's micropayment based monetization stuff. There's a lot, and it's probably more than we can get into in full detail here. But
Sure.
we can try to provide a broad overview and see about getting these tools in the hands of devs so they can really start to build some stuff.
So I think all of this stuff sounds like the premise for the hackathon. So maybe let's talk about each of those things under that umbrella. First of all, let us know the when and where about the hackathon. Where can people sign up? Like all of that kind of stuff, and then let's get into the couple of bullet points of what is being covered on the hackathon, and why.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably a good spot to segue there.
Yeah. So the domain that we have, the website where you can go to sign up to the BSV Hackathon. It's really, really, really a hard URL to remember, and I don't know if we can if we can point people to the right place. If you want to go to the BSV Hackathon in Austin, Texas, you should go to the website bsvhackathon.com.
I'm going to forget that for sure.
If you go to bsvhackathon.com, you can go to the BSV Hackathon in Austin, Texas, which is taking place on April 5th and April 6th. It's an in-person event, so it's going to be Saturday and Sunday. And everybody's going to have 24 hours to basically build some really fun things. And the plan is we're going to give away $30,000 first place prize, $15,000 second place, and $10,000 third place. So for a total of over $50,000 in prizes for people who leverage these new open source components of the BSV ecosystem in order to create compelling applications that are somewhat, we have technical judges, but we also have Rob Bennett as somebody who's on the website as going to provide a more business oriented perspective as to is this stuff valuable in industry, and who's actually, does it have legs from the kind of VC and actual business side of it. So that's an overview of the event. It's going to be at the Texas Socket Company in Austin, Texas. We'll be starting up around noontime on Saturday the 5th, and we'll start off with some presentations. We will make sure everybody forms teams, knows why they're there, what they're doing, what tools they have available to them. And then they'll be able to write code all the way from the afternoon, all night on Saturday night, and then we'll get there bright and early on Sunday, kind of help people resolve any remaining issues, wrap things up, have a little session of doing some presentations so people get to have a little bit of time to, talk about what they built, maybe 10, 15-minute little pitch. And then we'll put our heads together over lunch and figure out winners and then go from there, just... one other thing, I guess, we're open sourcing all the solutions. So when people build things for this hackathon, we're gonna publish all the source code under the OpenBSV license, and that way, if you use the BSV blockchain, you have some new proofs of concept that are going to be available. And so by making the code public, we contribute to a broader set of examples and proofs of concept. But then, of course, the hackathon prize winners are going to be free, of course, to take their prize money and use that to maybe fund further development, or take that and run with it with a business, or extend it to completion. And so we want to work with those people after the event too, to make sure that they have what they need. And really the goal here is get more developers to understand more of this tech, and that way we can build an ecosystem where developers can help each other answer questions, train new people, and start to get the flywheel going on an interoperable, vendor-neutral ecosystem of compatible wallets and overlay networks and capabilities on the network, so that we all have what we need. And there's 4 pillars of the hackathon. I can go into that next, but I'm really looking forward to to really having more of these types of in-person events and bringing back that type of hackathon energy to the space in a way that people can just enjoy themselves and win some money and network around and get some good businesses off the ground finally.
Yep. I think that's really important too. I'm a big fan of in-person, and it feels like since COVID, I think a lot of people, you kind of get that 50-50. You get the people who are like, I really need to be around people, or you get the people who got addicted to being alone. And so I'm a big fan of the in-person stuff, just because you can get so much more understanding from a conversation in person than you can with, bickering threads on X or in Slack. But so anyways, as soon as you announced it, I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do there. Like maybe we'll bring something to compete. Maybe we'll just go to hang out. But I was like, we're going to this. We're going to hang out. So it's going to be a good time. Quick question. You mentioned Rob Bennett, who is a co-founder at Birch Capital. Is this somebody you have a relationship with, or how did you get Rob on board? I saw that, but I'm curious where does he come from? That's not a name that I know, so I'm curious who found him. And...
He was a connect for somebody local to Austin, to my
Okay.
understanding, and we basically just had a meeting and talked about the event and what it was, and he said he was going to be a judge. He sent over
Cool.
his photo and his description. So we'll have him at the event, and I think that having pretty outside, unbiased, but business and VC oriented, is this actually useful? Does this
Right.
actually matter to people? Perspective at this event. Not like obviously, we have the BSV people who are going to
Yeah.
think that tech is really cool because it's using BSV, and we're going to judge, on one side, according to, all right, how much BSV stuff does this demo or proof of
Yep.
concept actually use? But having that other perspective for somebody that's not even a BSVer, right? I think is really important. And to be clear, I don't know, that he's completely not a BSVer. He might, have heard a thing or two about it, but
Sure.
but yeah, that's the kind of thing I want to do is try to align BSV and the demos, the use cases, the examples, proofs of concept, and eventually businesses that get built with
Yeah.
something that's actually going to have a chance at success in the real world and be able to get funded, be able to really just make an impact on people's lives and create real value, because
Yeah.
I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. And that's why I brought him on board as somebody from that side of the fence, if that makes
That's
sense.
great. Love it. So let's get into the 4 pillars. There's 4 pillars here that are being covered. Let's get into them, please.
Yeah. So really, when people build with this new stack, there are 4 things that we're looking at integrating. So there's the wallet and the use of the new, BRC 100 style wallets within, basically using that wallet to create transactions and do other things that the wallet's capable of doing, encrypt data, create signatures, have, things like that. So there's wallet, there's identity, um, there's overlay networks, and then there's micropayments. So wallet, identity, overlay networks, and micropayments. And those are the 4 pillars. Um, Identity relates to, we have these digital certificates, which are like little documents that endorse a little, like an attribute of who you are or what you're good at or some skill or maybe it's your name or email. Maybe it's the fact that you live in a particular place, or maybe it's that you're really good at, like doing content creation or coding or whatever it is. And,
Yeah.
so a certificate is a document that attests to something about someone, and it's signed off by some issuer. And so we have some tools around identity that also plug into the wallet, and all of these kind of things they plug together pretty nicely into a cohesive stack and way of building. But the wallet works together with identity, and overlay networks are another area. They're related to basically keeping track of different transactions, tokens, interactions, things in apps, and coordinating kind of the state of apps across users on the BSV network. So overlays provide kind of a coordination layer, a synchronization layer for information and for on-chain transactions. And the final thing is micropayments. It's very simple. It's just you can pay small amounts of money for things. Who can think of the most creative ideas around what to do with that? So we have a lot of tools and and capabilities in all of these areas that we could get into to really think about how these things are going to work, and and what developers should know in order to get started. But I think that yeah, the 4 pillars are they're very closely tied into all the stuff we just released, and we got some good resources on the website at this point. So developers that want to check out those 4 pillars in a lot more detail, they can go to bsvhackathon.com/resources, and there's like over a dozen links to essentially a lot of this, and showing developers some example apps that use these components, whether it's overlays with smart contracts, or whether it's the wallet to create transactions and interact with apps that way via BRC 100, whether it's identity solutions with digital certificates, or whether it's micropayments. And one compelling example, I guess, to kind of bring it back to something concrete. And this was just a random idea that my CTO Braden and I were talking through maybe a week ago when he was down at the Babbage HQ in person. We thought of a use case for tying together digital identity certificates and micropayments. Mm-hmm. So the simplest demo of a digital identity certificate is called CoolCert. And it's basically, someone certifies a document that says they think, someone else is cool, right? So you get a CoolCert. It's like, oh, cool. I get to be considered a cool person according to some issuer. Yeah. So we have this CoolCert idea, which is like a cool badge. And then we had this little API, and it fetched weather data from Mars. So we basically made it so that if you're a cool person, then you get a discount on micropayment-based Martian weather data. And that little app is called MarsCast. It's linked on the website. But it was just like tying together, right? We have the ability to have these identity certificates or documents that kind of attest to something about someone, such as, this person is cool. Yeah. Then we have a server on the back end that accepts payment, and it will give you a discount or it will give you access to certain other information only if you have a particular certificate. So the server is going to sit there and it's going to ask, right, do you have the CoolCert certificate? Yeah. And if you do, then it will allow you to purchase for, a tenth of a penny, micropayment-based weather data from Mars, and you'll accept that payment. So that's one of the little examples that I think we came up with pretty recently as a starting point, because all that code that does that is public, and maybe micropayment-based weather data from Mars for cool people is not the most business-oriented use case, but somebody could use these primitives and these kind of capabilities to do a lot more stuff that maybe is a little bit more compelling or more useful. And that was kind of the idea.
That's so I keep trying, like, in on the one hand is like the nerdiest thing, but because it's like so weird that I have to love it. But oh man, no, that's really funny. We got Brett, and I see Brett commenting, Ty, you have to, is being cool a skill? Is this something we can learn, or is it inherent? Is this an inherent property of certain people?
I think that a person can learn to be cool in some contexts. Like, in some ways, sometimes people are inherently cool in some ways. And in other cases, I think that people will learn to be more cool over time. For example, I think that the wallets in the BSV space that implement BRC100 will be cool after they do that. However, I think that certain people and certain there is inherent coolness to certain things. For the record, Kurt, I think you are an inherently cool person, and so if you get a cool person certificate, I will gladly sign off on it using my MetaNet desktop wallet, so that you can get micropayment-based weather data from Mars.
This is good. I keep thinking, like, there's a conversation to be had about like social credit scores and dystopian stuff, but this is like one step further removed from, like, is this the world we want to live in? And at this point, I'm leaning more yes than I was 10 minutes ago. So,
well, as an AI language model, right? It's like, okay, how do we tie this into like all the crazy AI stuff that's going on? Yeah. Because like we need to have certification of something being real, something being made by a human, because an AI can now write something that is almost indistinguishable from human-made text or human thoughts, right? So like if we have the ability to certify that, like, at least I'm a real person, or maybe somebody that I trust has signed off on this.
Yep.
We could try to cut down on some of the fake content that's created on the internet from AI, for example.
Sure.
And so there's some interesting use cases there, like, I don't know, hint, hackathon project idea.
There you go. Yeah.
Somebody could try to link a digital signature to some content based on a certificate that was issued. And so
Yep.
that way we can say, all right, we're issuing this as a hey, this is a real person, or this is a credible source. It's not an AI. This image is real, whatever the case is. And that way, when you have a BSV wallet installed on your computer, you can verify that signature, and it'll actually let you know that the content you're looking at is legitimate, or at least that it came from someone that you trust.
Yep. Well, that's so important, and it's going to get increasingly important. I think the one of my favorite things about this AI revolution is that people understand that data really is money. It is currency. It's the most valuable thing, and so somehow it is both the most valuable thing right now, but also maybe the most undervalued thing as a commodity. And that especially if you can prove that it is real data or pure data or something, as opposed to is this just regurgitated AI data?
Right.
Getting data that's never been scraped and then messed with by an AI is going to itself become a rarer and more valuable commodity.
Yeah.
I read an article, it's got to be 2 or 3 months ago now, and there was a guy talking about it was something like all the medical research data from a couple of European countries has never been put in an online fashion for this reason that they assumed that at some point it would get scraped and used in a way that was unsavory for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And the person interviewing him was discussing, well, why would it be bad for AI to scrape this data and use it? And he said, well, because the AI is still so immature, and what they could do with this data, because this data hasn't been otherwise published in public, that it can misinterpret it and then set the standard that the misinterpretation of the data is the data itself. And
Right.
then who knows what the spillover, like second and order negative effects of that could be. And apparently it's medical research data going back to like the World War II era. So some of it is
Wow.
like Nazi Germany medical research data, some of which is illegal at this point to
Hmm.
have like you can't conduct these experiments again, but they're like, yeah, but we don't want to lose the data. Like whatever has been discovered in these experiments needs to
Hmm.
be used.
Yeah.
But it's been like a human rights issue on how to use it. But they've continued to add medical research to this repo. It's in Switzerland or
Interesting.
something. But yeah, it was a really interesting article. I'll have to look it back up because they were basically saying, our ability to conduct medical research and to document the things that we learn is one of the most important things that a human scientist can do. It's like one of our major contributions to like existence. And so to make sure that that's done well is really
Yeah.
important. And they have never, basically it was decided that until the technology exists to do it right, they don't want to publish it in public because they assume it'll be managed wrong.
Huh.
And so there's a big opportunity there to explain, like, hey, maybe we figured out data provenance
Right.
sufficiently that you'd be willing to publish all of this research that's been done over the last, I don't know, 75 or 80 years or whatever it is. So
Yeah. I mean, the
yeah.
blockchain, of course, with time stamping, we can prove that a certain thing came before something else, right? We can say this
Yeah.
was the original copy, and we can prove that this existed back before a new derivative work was made or something. And
Mhm.
so I think that would actually contribute to higher quality training data for AI if we were to use it for that.
Yep.
But also, if somebody does make a derivative work, it's very easy to prove that that work is based on some previous work that existed, before.
Mhm.
And then if you're training AIs and the AI starts to wander into this, derivative or misconstrued work, you
Yeah.
could actually create a reward function, it's called, in the training process that tells the AI, no, bad, don't do that,
Yeah.
because we know that you're not citing the original source. And that way we could have reward functions in AI training that cause the AI to learn to actually find the original sources for things that
Hmm.
it could be trying to utilize.
No,
And it
that's
could also make the AI training process a lot more transparent. So that's an interesting thing. And I think that we can build, with overlay networks, we could track data on the blockchain
yep.
as tokenized sort of information within outputs. We have a chain-backed storage system as well that you could use to store large amounts of data, but make sure that that data is backed by the fingerprinting process, the integrity guarantees of the blockchain in a scalable way. And we also, just like the past week, we released a repo called Bitcoin-SV/storage server. So the storage server is open source now as well, and that's exactly what it does. So by integrating that together with a system for tracking, the data, that whether it's in a global context of just let's make a historical archive, or whether it's specific to AI training and the possibilities around that, I think that would also be a really creative application of blockchain tech. And you could use that for a hackathon project. And if something like that is a little bit too complex, a simpler thing that's also valuable, that we can do in a very similar vein is just audit logging, right? Just like log piece of information on blockchain, right? And so you could just have like an audit log, maybe for a sensitive computer system or something. And that way, when somebody accesses that sensitive computer system, we're creating this immutable record of all of the access. And that would be a much simpler thing to build. But either way, I mean, there's tons of ideas here. And a lot of the stuff that we've been working to release, and we finally have released in the past week, I think is going to contribute to some building blocks, some infrastructure, some architecture based, some guidance for people who are architecting these solutions. And I think if we do that properly, it's just going to get easier and easier to do this right, and to have a ledger of truth that we can all depend on, and to show developers the things that developers need to see so they can build this stuff, and to let the business people understand on that side what they need to understand so that they can fund, and so they can understand how they need to allocate resources to kind of execute and to get the stuff over the line and to start to integrate it into more places in our world. And I think that's what I'm most excited about within the blockchain industry over the next 3 to 5 years.
No, I think it's funny because I agree. I think that kind of use case, as sort of mundane as it sounds on a
So
pitch
simple.
deck, it sounds like, well, aren't there ways to solve that other one? And the answer is like, not really, not to really do it right. And when you do that right, you actually want that kind of thing to get abstracted away so that you can focus on the other stuff that you want to work on in your life, because that sort of basic information is done properly, and so you can move on. It's like, it's like, I can't remember who said it. It's an old adage about like, why do you wear a watch? Like, are you obsessed with time? And the answer is no. I don't want to ever think about the time unless I absolutely have to. And so I want to be able to just glance occasionally to say, okay, here's what time it is, and then move on with all the other stuff in my life. And I think it's one of those things that this data provenance and certification of it and all this stuff has been so thoroughly dealt with that you can just glance at it whenever it's necessary, but then just move on with your life for maybe months or years at a time, and not have to re-audit, and which I think is the main thing that separates your big blockers from your small blockers. Is your small blockers want to be able to audit everything forever because that's just that I guess that's what they value in the world. But
sure, what's crazy to me, and this actually took me, I got into Bitcoin in 2017. And it took me about like 5 years until like 2022 to actually figure this out fully. Is in order to get to the point where we can not think about a use case like that, we also needed to get to the point where we can not think about what is a Bitcoin wallet, what is a Bitcoin overlay, what is a Bitcoin transaction, how do you manage keys, how do you manage generating change outputs, how do you manage pay to public key hash and op return and push drop scripts and all of this stuff. And so not only do we have to, because like people have tried to standardize. I mean, Smart Ledger has done a really good thing for the tools that they had available at the time, with the Sentinel node, I believe it's called. And people have tried to solve these specific problems, right, on top of the blockchain. And that has worked to a point. But the blockchain itself has to be defined in such a way that it can be abstracted away.
Yep.
And that way we can build simple things on top, so that not only do we have to, not only can we avoid thinking about, logging and just that simple act of preserving a record in an immutable way, but also we don't have to think about getting the underlying blockchain infrastructure right with respect to
Yep.
wallets and all of those little nuts and bolts that I just talked about. It's like we need to abstract away the blockchain. That's step one, and I think we're finally there in 2025. It's crazy that we haven't been here before and that we haven't done this yet, but we finally have the tools, the building blocks, the abstractions, the standards, the interoperability, the open source kind of approach that's necessary to abstract away the whole blockchain itself, so that people who build on the blockchain don't have to think about all that stuff. And that way they can all build in the same way. And then when they're all building in the same way, someone can come along finally in 2025 for like the first time ever and truly create that use case of abstracting away, the logging of an immutable data record or something. But actually what I realized around 2022, which it took me 5 years of being in Bitcoin before I realized this, is like, you can't really go after a lot of that with a lot of success and credibility and enterprise and government level adoption if you're building these tools in the wrong way, or on top of a data silo, or on top of a Web2 walled garden, or maybe a Web2 company that's pretending to be a Web3 company, but then they shut down and all their stuff stops working, and all your Paymail handles that you bought, I guess you just don't get your money back. I don't know what happened there with Money Button. I didn't realize that until yesterday. Somebody was on a Twitter space with me and they were like, I bought so many Money Button Paymails, and then I guess I don't get my money back when I don't use my. I'm not sure how that worked, but my point is that kind of nonsense at the blockchain layer makes it impossible for real utility to emerge on top. Now we have a cohesive open source stack on which we can have a hackathon project to build a very, very simple thing with data integrity or something like that. But I actually think it was fundamentally impossible to do that in a sustainable and long-term viable way until we had gotten there with the blockchain itself. And that's what I realized. And I wanted to bring this up because I thought it was such a crazy realization that I had to, basically spend 3 years from 2022 until 2025 to get us there and to try to get the ecosystem aligned that way. But this hackathon is really the rollout of that fundamental piece. What is the BSV blockchain? What is this infrastructure? How can we use it? And if we get there, then we can start to build these things. And I think we'll be able to do it in a way that lets everybody be in more control over their identities, their assets, and really just their digital presence or their digital selves, if that makes sense. I hope we can get there, but it's been a long road, man.
It sure has. And you make a really good point, and it's true. Like the tooling was unsophisticated, it was immature, and we're finally, like, with these new SDKs and a lot of these things that have come out, some of which we've been involved in producing. I'm really proud of what's been created by a few of these teams, including yours, on making this stuff easier. I have two quick questions from the audience, and then possibly a longer one. The first quick one is, will the hackathon be live streamed anywhere?
I don't know. I hope so. If somebody's there with the camera and wants to plug into a StreamYard or an OBS or something, we can make it happen. We did it in San Fran, and it was pretty ad hoc. But, to be clear, we didn't really go to that event with the plan to live stream. We just kind of made it happen, and it worked out really well. We got lots of engagement.
It did. I
think we can do a thing. We can see what. The answer is probably yes. But we're not going to say for sure yes, because there's no solid plans yet. But
and then from Eric, who is a frequent viewer, so thank you, Eric, asking, I'm not a developer, but is the hackathon open to viewers or people who just want to mingle? Yes, mingle.
Yeah, come and pay us a visit, I suppose. If you're there to help out and share ideas and maybe suggest ideas for a team, I don't know. Like there's things you can do. We do want to see as many developers as possible. So I'd encourage you to at least develop a conceptual familiarity with the technology. And maybe if you have some developers as friends, it's going to be much. I'll say this: if you bring a friend who's a developer, then you're welcome to come along. Like
There you go.
if you're kind of bringing them along and whatnot, I think that's like the best approach. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is a developer focused event. It's going to be very technical in nature. It's just going to be lots of people coding things and answering technical questions and building stuff. But yeah, I think that strikes a good
Yep.
balance.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a show for general audiences if
Yeah.
that's what's being asked. So, then the third one, can we talk about the rules just a little bit? Can the project have already been worked on? Like how, if somebody's bringing something that, hey, I've been working on this for 3-4 months and I'm kind of rolling it out at the hackathon. Is it something that's allowed, or what are the rules on that?
So you need to. So number one, we're going to take that into account when we decide who's the winner. I think it's much more impressive if you show up on the day of and code something, or maybe you've just been working on it for like a week and you heard about the hackathon and then you started building something. We're going to look at the degree to which you use the tools that we've provided. So if you have something that's just not, it's using a centralized database for all of its backend operations rather than using an overlay service, it's not using the wallet at all. Like probably, it's not very aligned. But I will say, if you do have a BSV thing, migrate it to the new stack, right?
Yep.
Bring it into the fold with all the new stuff. Bring it up to speed with all these new things, and we'll check it out. So yeah, it's going to be a factor, right? You can bring it. The other hard requirement, though, is at the end of the hackathon, whatever you submit for us to review to decide about whether you're going to win, that code we're going to publish. So everybody's code that gets submitted for basically wanting to be considered for winning the prize, right? We're going to publish that code under the Open BSV license. And so just be aware of that, right? That doesn't mean you can't continue to build your thing. It just means that whatever state your project was in at that point, whether it's proof of concept or something a little bit more, it sounds like in this case, we're going to make that code available so that everybody in the ecosystem has access to a lot more proofs of concept that use the stack. So be aware of that.
All right. So we're basically at the top of the hour. Do you have a 30-second closing thought before we let you go?
Sure. I would just encourage people to think about what kind of ecosystem they want to build and what kind of apps that you think you could contribute into the BSV blockchain. There's a lot of stuff that we're releasing, and we know it's a lot. But if you're a developer, definitely consider going to Austin, Texas on April 5th and 6th. Check out the resources page on bsvhackathon.com. Learn the tech, and even if you can't attend, just check it out and see what you might be interested in building. Maybe some of these things that we've talked about here have motivated you in some way. We're trying to create the best ecosystem full of the brightest people, and we're here to answer your questions as well. Finally, if you can't afford to attend, maybe this is an in-person event and you're halfway across the country and plane tickets are a little spendy, whatever the case is, you can apply for us to sponsor your travel. So there's the main developer application, but there's also the sponsorship. And so basically what that means is if you really dig into the tech and you show me that you have a full understanding of what it is that we've released, then maybe we'll buy your plane ticket or something. So you can take a quiz and then we'll go on a call with you. That's available on the website too. We want to see as many people who understand this tech in that room on the day of. And I think we're going to get there. But I just want to make that opportunity available. So go to bsvhackathon.com, guys. Check it out. And we look forward to seeing you on April 5th in Austin, Texas.
Perfect. Ty, thanks so much, man. It's good to see you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in about 3 weeks.
Cool. Thanks, Kurt.
All right. Yep. Take care. All right. So we are wrapping. We may have had a couple of general questions here. I wanted to address, I've seen a couple people ask about the steganography. I started to read the paper. It's like 80 something pages. And so I have not dug all the way into it. I kind of wanted to let it marinate a little bit. So I am not all the way up to date on the steganography thing. I find it compelling, at least conceptually, but One of the premises of this show, and I've said it since day one, which is now 5 years ago, we started doing this show, is that this show is not about any one person, even if that person is Satoshi Nakamoto. This show is about the builders and the businesses, the people that want to make Bitcoin great, maybe for the first time, but maybe make it great again. But by specifically using it for things that only Bitcoin can give to the world. Like, this is what I care about. I care about essentially entrepreneurship. And so all of these things, and I say this as a friend to the person that we're talking about. I mean, I don't want to bring him up and talk about him because everybody turns it into, Craig worship. And like, he's someone who I respect, and he's someone who I actually like, but ultimately the conversation surrounding the mythos of him and all of these things is not particularly productive. And so this show, I have designated as a place to talk about all the other things, because there's lots of people that just want to talk about him. And I think that's great. I encourage people to do it and whatever, because it is fascinating. It is its own art project, history project, and all of that. And I am supportive of it. And I find it compelling and interesting and entertaining and all of that too. But this show is not really not focused on that, which is why I don't like, he's never been on the show. And that's not out of disrespect. It's out of respect for the work that's being done with the technology. And so ultimately, I'm excited to see what comes of it. If, all the experts can go on to agree or disagree about what's there. I am not an expert on steganography, so for me to comment on it is probably inappropriate anyways. I would have to regurgitate somebody else's research and pretend that it was me that knew it. I'm going to have the humility to say, like, sorry, this is outside of my skill set also. And so we're just not going to talk about it. That being said, I really like Alex Favell. I think he's probably put a sincere bit of work personally into what it is. And I will give it the time to give it a full read when I have the chance. But as a father of 3 and someone that's running a couple of businesses, so it makes me like a father of 5 or 6 at that point, if you count the companies, I am exhausted trying to keep up with all of that stuff. So anyways, by all means, like, I hope nobody takes that as a criticism or an endorsement either direction, but by all means, this is not the place, frankly. So if it becomes like, oh my God, this is a definitely confirmed thing, then absolutely, we'll talk about it. But it's, again, that's for other people to do, and we'll get there when we get there. Anyways, I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. This has been the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. I encourage you, check out bsvhackathon.com. The exciting things that will ever happen in Bitcoin will be a product of the people that build on Bitcoin. So be one of those people if you want to matter in the future. People don't really talk about Tim Berners-Lee anymore, but they do talk about all the people that are building, all the cool applications. Like, Mark Zuckerberg is on the circuit because he developed the applications that everybody uses, instead of the guy that built all the other stuff, the underlying stuff. Now, nerds like me may talk about Tim Berners-Lee, a couple times a year because he's a fascinating character and did a lot of very important things 20 years ago. But truly, I want to encourage people to build the apps that bring the people to Bitcoin. So I'd encourage you to do the same. If you are not able to, like, look for opportunities to give support, look for opportunities to invest in businesses, not just in coins. But ultimately, I love you guys. I love doing this show. I'm really grateful for everybody who watched. Anybody, especially if you like, subscribe, hit the alert bell and all of that jazz. You are my bread and butter. You are my people. And please set your calendars for 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on every Tuesday, because I do not ever quit. And hope to see you, see you on the other side, see you on the moon, and all the rest of that stuff. Whatever all the cool kids are saying now, because I think Ty said I was cool. So I'm looking forward to getting my cool cert and and sharing it. I will share it across the internet. Anyways, thanks everybody. Go out there, be good to each other, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.